I'm going to take you through the syllabus at this time. So this is what your course will be looking at like, and you'll at least see all of the structures that you see, all of the information you see at the top here should look pretty similar to the way the course looks to you when you first open the link. All right, so in order to find the syllabus, you're going to click on this file here that says before starting syllabus and information video. So just click on that. There's a number of information videos in here, of course, the intro video. There is a schedule. There is a lecture that I already gave that tours through the lecture folders, and that Professor Botero gave that tours through the lab folders. And then down at the bottom here you have your syllabus. So you'll see, I don't think you'll see the Word document. We usually keep that hidden. It's sort of a draft that we can continue to edit if necessary. But the PDF, without barring unforeseen incidents, it should remain exactly as it is. The syllabus should remain just as written currently. So this PDF should be present for your viewing pleasure at any time during the course. Okay, so you can go ahead and look, and it'll just give you a preview here, which I will work off of. You can go ahead and download it as well if you like, and print it if you like. Some students still like to have a printed version of the syllabus. Might I suggest that if you're going to print it off, you don't have to print all of the pages. You probably want to print page 2, which is the grading scale, and then print page 4 and 5, which are the actual schedule for the class, because those are usually the ones that students want to refer to the most. But anyway, the syllabus should be present for you and should not change, barring, again, any unforeseen issues. Let's go ahead and start with the schedule here. I just wanted to go through this with you. I don't think we can go through this enough. I think that if you have lots of exposures to this information, it's going to be easier for you to kind of get the swing of how things are going to work. And so the summer session begins on May 30th. And the first session will go between May 30th and June 4th. The first 4 days of this session, you'll be working on 2 lecture sets and 1 lab set. And then you will take the lecture exam on June 3rd or June 4th. And so those are written here, Saturday, June 3rd at 3 p.m. or Sunday, June 4th at 8 a.m. The lecture activities here will be the cell and plasma membrane and the receptors and organelles. And the lab activities will be the cell anatomy and division, and then the cell transport. So you'll notice that you only have a lecture exam at this time. You do not have a lab exam that you will be tested on at this time. The same thing with the second session. You only have a lecture exam too. You do not yet have a lab exam. But you'll notice that the time course is a little different. So again, you'll be working on 2 lecture sets and 1 lab set for the first 4 days of this session. Session 2 is between June 5th and 12th, and so between June 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, we would be asking you to work through those sets. And then on days 5 and 6, June 9th and June 10th, at 3 p.m. or 8 a.m., you will be taking lecture exam number 2, and this will be on body orientation and homeostasis and the integumentary system. However, at the last 2 days of this, after your lecture exam is over, we ask you to take 2 additional days and start preparing for lab exam number 1. So June 11th and 12th, after you've finished the lecture exam, after you finish all the lecture stuff, now you'll be preparing for your first lab exam. And that will include lab 2, language of anatomy and the classification of tissues, in addition to all of the stuff that you covered in lab 1. So you'll notice then that in the first 2 days of session 3, you'll actually have lab exam 1. So the first thing you want to do in the third session, which is between June 13th and 22nd, is you will be taking lab exam 1 on June 13th or 14th. And there it is. And you can sign up for your time that you want to take that. And then you go ahead and move on, to the next session. If you want to, go ahead and take a couple of days off while you're kind of getting into the swing of things, and you've probably been working pretty hard for a couple of weeks on this stuff and taken 3 exams already. You might want to take a little bit of breathing room and take some time. But after that, go ahead and come back and get back into the swing of things. June 17th through June 20th, you'll be spending 4 working days on this information here, bone physiology 1 and 2. And then you'll be taking a lecture exam based on that information Wednesday, June 21st, or Thursday, June 22nd, again at 3 p.m. the first day, 8 a.m. the second day. and the lab exam. Okay, so that'll be finished by that time. All right, and then it goes on like this. So the fourth day, the fourth week, the fourth working session, you will have again 2 lecture sets, 1 lab set between June 23rd and June 26th. But this time you're actually going to be taking a lab exam first. So you're going to have your appendicular skeleton, joints and articulations. We felt like this is a pretty information dense set of labs. You'll additionally be tested on lab 3, which is the axial skeleton. So all of this information together, we thought it was fair game to go ahead and give you lab exam 2 based on all the bone anatomy, and that would be June 27th or June 28th. Notice that during this session you don't actually have a lecture exam. However, just as you had been doing before, always keep those 4 working days in mind. Don't try to skip steps. Just try to keep yourself nice and organized. Even though you don't actually have a lecture exam, you will have lecture information that you have to retain for the 5th session. So in the 5th session, between June 29th and July 4th, you'll have your 2 lecture sets and 1 lab set. This will be on the synapses and muscle physiology. This will be on the axial muscles and appendicular muscles. And then you'll have lecture exam 4. But keep in mind, this lecture exam will be based on 2 sessions worth of lectures. The nervous information and the muscle information. This will be the day that, unfortunately, if you don't schedule it quite right, you might actually end up taking an exam July 4th at 8 in the morning. So it is. There it is. Monday, July 3rd or Tuesday, July 4th. The July 3rd at 3 p.m. or July 4th at 8 a.m. But hey, if you have to take your exam on July 4th, at least you get it done quickly and then you can go see a parade or something. All right, so then we come to our last session, which is going to be pretty intensive. As you can see, you actually do have both a lab exam and a lecture exam. As always, you'll have 4 working days to work through 2 lecture sets and 1 lab set. Sensation, perception, taste, smell, vision, and hearing in lecture. And then the anatomy of the brain, cranial nerves, and spine in lab. And then you'll see that in this case, you want to be careful about the schedule here. Lab exam 3 is going to be first, July 9th or 10th. And then we'll give you a couple of days. It says take 1 more day to prepare for your last exam. So depending on how you schedule everything out, you could have 2 or 3 days to prepare here before your lab exam and your last lecture exam, which will be Wednesday, July 12th at 3 p.m. or Tuesday, July 13th at 8 a.m. So it's a lot to think about in the moment, but just sort of take it 1 session at a time. Don't skip steps. Do all of the things you're supposed to do, and I think it'll all work out pretty well. All right, now I want to take you up to the next thing that students pay the most attention to, which would definitely be the grading portion of the syllabus. And so there's 5 lecture exams, 100 points each for a total of 500 points. There's 19 quizzes and exercises. They are 10 points each or so. It may be variable for a total of 190 points. The lab portion of the class, 9 quizzes, 9 lab worksheets. Lowest one dropped of each of these. They are 10 points each. So a total of 80 points for each of them. And then 3 lab practicals at 50 points each for 150 points. So 310 points of the class are going to be based on lab material, and 690 points of the class are going to be based on lecture material. This is the way that we traditionally break down anatomy and physiology. It's going to be about 1/3 lab information and then 2/3 lecture information. For lab-based classes, that is appropriate. And it is simple points. You can kind of keep a running total in Schoology. We will try to update things as quickly as possible, but since this is a fast-moving class, it's possible we might not get everything updated each and every single day, but I'm sure, every session we'll be trying to update things. So we will, on the side here, you can kind of keep track of where you're at. And the basics of it is if you have 970 points at the end of the session, you'll get an A+. The plus in this case, an A+, I do not think actually works to change your GPA, but sometimes students like to see that plus on their transcripts, and maybe your program likes to see that too, or your future your future grad school or anything else that they might be interested in. Your future employer might like to see A pluses on your transcript. So they're kind of fun to have on there. However, they don't affect your GPA. Um, Beyond that, everything else, it does count: A minus, B plus. Basically, if you have, say, 880 points at the end of the session, you'll get a B plus. It's basic points at this point. It's basic points. It's just a total of points. We do tend to keep a running total of percentages in Schoology. However, it doesn't always translate perfectly over. So at some point, if things seem to be getting kind of murky over there, I might remove the percentage column and ask you to just go ahead and keep track of your running total of points, because that is what your grade is based on anyway. All right, so there's a description of all of these things here, the lecture exams. I think you can go over all of these descriptions on your own, I would say. There are 60 minutes allotted for completion of each of the lecture exams. They are 100 points each. There is going to be 10 questions, so 10 points each, and then 6 minutes basically on average allotted for completion. If you have an accommodation that allows for a time and a half, which is a pretty typical academic accommodation, then you would be given 90 minutes. You are going to be asked to take your own notes. So sometimes students will use like, say, an iPad to take notes, but they're still taking those notes by hand. I think this is a great way to take notes, and of course many students are still using a traditional notebook. So either way, whatever you want to do, but I would ask that all of your notes are actually handwritten rather than typed up. So be careful about that kind of stuff. If you handwrite your notes, it's a more cognitive process, and it's going to be better in the long run. And so anything that you yourself have personally written or drawn, you may use as an open notes exam. Keep in mind, though, let's see, what did I want to say here? You cannot Google information. You cannot share Google Drives. You cannot share notes with anybody else. You can't, of course, text or email anybody during the exam. This is meant to be taken by yourself, but you are allowed to use your notes. So hopefully that will not become a problem going forward. I occasionally did catch students Googling questions, and they were given zeros for those questions. So make sure that you do not do that. Don't give in to the temptation. Even if you don't fully understand a question, make sure you put something down, even if you think that you haven't fully answered the question. At least you'll try to get some partial points by putting something down for the question. So that's another thing to kind of warn you about. If you don't put anything down at all, if you run out of time, for example, and nothing is written, I have no choice but to give you a zero for that particular question. So make sure that you are at least writing something down. Write something down for all of them. Maybe go through all 10 questions, write something down so you don't skip something accidentally, and then you can come back to it later. Let's see. Material for the lectures is not cumulative, but the topics do flow together. I think this last statement here is pretty important to pay attention to. Questions will include short answer critical thinking and drawing questions. So the drawing questions will be things that you have to hand draw on a blank piece of paper. Do not try to just photograph it out of your notes, for example. You have to redraw it on a new piece of paper. I'll ask you to sign your name to it, take a picture, and then upload it into the exam. And I've said this before, but I'll say it again. You can't actually airdrop from an iPhone into a laptop. That format does not upload properly, so you have to find a different way. If you can just attach it to, say an email quick, or if you can attach it to a message of some kind and get it to your laptop that way, that will be a format that will be accepted by the exam format. So just keep that in mind. You can't airdrop. It's, as far as I can tell, it's the only form of sharing of these documents back and forth that will not work. So you have to find a different way. And I will have a practice exam so that you can practice that process. Let's see. Oh, and then so the drawing part of it will be one thing, and then the critical thinking part of it, I think, is the types of questions that students get the most stressed about. Because like, put yourself in my shoes, right? I have to make sure that you actually understand the concepts as we go forward. So I will be asking you to take variant pieces of information and put them together into a new thought. And that can be, it can feel like you're being asked something that we did not cover at all in class together, And the reason for that is I can't ask you the exact questions that we covered in class because they're very likely in your notes and you'd be able to simply copy and paste them out of your notes. It wouldn't actually be an assessment of your learning in that case. I have to make sure that you actually understand the information. So critical thinking questions allow us to do that. So I encourage, I beg you, if it doesn't sound too dramatic, to please prepare carefully. As we have suggested, use the 4 working days, get the information done as in those working days, so you have plenty of time to rewrite notes, give yourself the Quizlets, go over the quizzes over and over again, so that you are really preparing and that you really understand the topics very well prior to starting the test. I find that students have not had the level of redundancy because they think, oh, I'll just have my notes there. That's fine. I'll be able to just look things up quickly. But the reality is you actually do have to understand things before you take the test. You have to actually understand the concepts very well. And there's plenty of information there, and there's plenty of exercises to make sure that you're getting that opportunity. If you really take the time to work through all of the review, all the quizzes, rewrite your notes, redraw the information, make your own practice review questions, things like that. Think about the kinds of questions that you might be asked on the test. Because without that careful preparation, having really gotten the information into your head, it's going to be quite difficult for you to answer critical thinking questions. So I don't know, we're trying to warn you a lot about this kind of a thing because it is one of those things that, students will feel like they'll feel the blood drain from their face and say, I've never heard of anything like this. And they'll click onto the Zoom session and ask me, what are you talking about with this question? And I can maybe give you some hints, but I also, again, have to be really careful about how much I'm connecting the dots for you. If you have prepared carefully, if you really understand the information, these types of critical thinking questions should be easy for you. But if you have not been careful about understanding the information as you go along, they will be a lot harder. All right, lecture quizzes here. There will be approximately 10 points each. These will be completed on your own schedule during the 4 working days allotted. It is suggested that each quiz is taken immediately after watching the lecture video that preceded it. Quizzes may be retaken multiple times. The final take should yield a perfect score for full points. So I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to allot those 10 points quite yet, but basically for each session, you do have to come up with about, for each individual set of videos, each of the quizzes will be assigned a certain number of points, and they will be adding up to 10 at some point. All right, in the lab worksheets and quizzes will be 10 points each. These will be available in Schoology and completed on your own schedule during each session. The lowest worksheet score and the lowest quiz score will be dropped. There will be only 1 attempt allowed for the worksheet, but with no time limit. Only 1 attempt allowed for the quiz, and this will be timed. So again, I think this kind of goes along with the warning I was giving earlier. You have to make sure that you are really preparing yourself well, because yes, technically when you take this quiz, you probably could look in your notes or in the PowerPoint and find the answers, but the reality is that if you're not pretty organized and have spent some time on it, that time is going to be running out pretty quickly. So you have to be pretty well prepared before the quiz, so be careful. And lastly, the lab practical exam. This will be really the only exams or assessments that you will not have any ability to look at notes at all. You will have a camera on you. You are expected to be able to identify structures, answer specific questions pertaining to lab exercises. These exams will be performed on Zoom after scheduling. So the lab practicums are not eligible for drop. So you want to make sure to, as we said in the introductory video, you put your hands under your chin, you put your elbows on the table, and you need to be able to answer the questions based on the information in your own head. You are not allowed to look in your notes or look anything up online or so on. And this, again, will have a time limit. I'm not sure exactly how Professor Botero is setting that up, but I have found that students really do know the information, or they don't. If you don't know it in the first, say, 30 seconds, you probably don't know the information. I will say that lab practical exams are as simple and straightforward as we can make them. We always make sure that it's a real simple question, because we do understand the stress of taking an exam in this way, and especially an oral exam when you're interacting with the professor one-on-one. We do understand how very stressful that is, so we make the questions as straightforward as possible. It really will be something like, okay, this bone is the humerus, and that structure on the humerus is called the trochlea. So um, like those are specific, detailed questions, but they are very straightforward. They will be on a list for you as long as you've done your preparation and have repeated and done all of the review exercises multiple times. You should be well prepared for this. No shortcuts, no shortcuts. All right, so participation, you want to conduct yourself in a professional manner at all times, of course. We do reserve the right to take away points from your total score if we find that you are disrespectful, especially if it's a repeat situation. All right, so those are the big things that we usually cover during the syllabus interaction. So now I'll just go back to the page 1 and talk about all the things, and you can work through all of these things yourself at this point, but I'll just go through everything real quick for you. The faculty are Professor Botero and myself, Professor Wenzel, and here are our email addresses. Definitely the best way to get a hold of us. We both check our email. I can speak for Professor Botero. She responds to emails pretty quickly, and so do I. Especially in a course like this, we would make an effort to respond to emails within 24 hours. However, keep in mind that we also have busy schedules. We will have things going on in our personal lives, and so it may not be possible to immediately respond to an email, but we will do our best to always do that. Okay, our offices, we have offices set up in the Strauss Center. However, we will not be there, and we do not have specific student hours set up. So if you want to ever have a session where we are interacting with each other, we can just set up a Zoom session. Both Professor Botero and myself, we have Zoom links already in Schoology, so you can just click on those and we can meet at a time that is agreed upon. The location and time of the class, of course, is entirely online, with exams that are scheduled and proctored, as we already went over. 4 credits to the class. This is the course description goals here. The materials for the class, here are the textbooks that are recommended and required. So the lecture textbook would be Maribid Hone, the 2019 edition. However, you could go ahead and go with a previous edition. This is the 11th edition, and you could go with the 10th edition or 9th if you wanted to save some money. I do not require, but I do recommend, and I'm getting further along the stage of really, really highly recommending that students go ahead and purchase the textbook, just so that they have that other resource available to them. It does not cost very much money to buy an old edition of the textbook, so I would go ahead and do that if you haven't already. Of course, if you have the dough, if you have the money for it, go ahead and buy the most up-to-date textbook for sure. That will go along with your actual reading the reading assignments that you are given. It would be recommended, but I, just for the sake of the fact that I want students to save money, I no longer require a textbook. However, there are ways around all of this. A lot of times you can find something like this in a library, or you can rent it for the semester, for example, to save yourself some money, or just go ahead and buy an older edition. The reading assignment will not be exactly the same, but it'll be pretty close. It'll be pretty close, and then you can just follow the figures in the lecture to find the proper pages. Okay, so then I do require that students go ahead and purchase at least 8 colors of pens, markers, or colored pencils. We do a lot of drawing together in class. It's a really good way of making sure that you are taking in the information. And if you are able to draw all the details of a figure, you've probably learned it pretty well. So this is one of the reasons why I ask for students to draw during an exam as well. So you'll want to have those, all those for your taking notes and also for the exams. The lab textbook, again, Merib here is Elaine Merib is the primary author, and it is going to be Smith for the secondary author. And this is the 12th edition of the lab textbook, and you are required to purchase this. You will be working directly out of the lab textbook. And since this is an older edition, a lot of times you can purchase it used. I don't recommend getting the electronic version of this, although sometimes students have. A lot of times they're printing things out from it or they are copying things into their notebook. It honestly is just a lot easier to work from the lab manual as it is. All right, it is suggested that you use any kind of review material that you have at your disposal. So 3x5 cards, that's actually my highest recommendation is that you go the old-fashioned route and actually hand write out 3x5 cards, because as we were talking about with notes, if you are manually writing something, that is a very cognitive process. However, many students now use Quizlet, and that is totally fine too. You know, the capabilities of Quizlet are fantastic. Make sure that you are creating your own Quizlets though, and you're not downloading something from somebody else. It is very likely that the information that they covered is going to be different from the information that you are covering. So if you create your own Quizlets, first of all, you make sure that it is actually the material that you need, and also it is, again, that nice cognitive process that you yourself are making it. Any kind of review materials, anatomy coloring books, anything like that. I get a lot of questions about anatomy coloring books. Really just anything will do. It doesn't have to go directly along with our textbook. I do believe there are review books, and I believe there are anatomy coloring books that go along with our authors. However, they are expensive. So you want to just any anatomy coloring book, they can be $10-15 in a bookstore. Those will be great for you. Make sure it's college level or at least high school level or something like that. I don't know. All right, you can go ahead and read over the Carthage Community Code. We want to make sure that we are committed to to creating a diverse community in our community. We want to make sure that we are encouraging diversity and open-mindedness. Here, if you have special learning needs, you can go ahead and work with our LAS office to make adjustments to the class to remove any kind of barriers that are in your way towards success in the class. And these are some important dates for the class. The last day to add a course is actually May 23rd. The summer term begins May 30th and goes through July 13th. The last day to drop a course is June 9th. The last day to withdraw, which would leave a W on your transcript, would be June 23rd. Just keep in mind that drop date comes pretty quick. It's about 10 days into the session, so make sure that you're paying attention to that one. If it's not working for you, then you want to make sure to drop it as quickly as possible. All right, we have expectations of students. We want to make sure that we have 7 touches of each piece of information. We have plenty of material in Schoology, and there's lots of online resources as well that are available to you to make sure that you do have those 7 touches, that every single thing that we talk about, you have seen, that you will have many opportunities to actually review and integrate that information into your brain. If you're struggling in the course, please get in touch with us and make sure that we are able to help you out. We will work with you to the best of our abilities to address the problem. Because we have so many opportunities to assess your knowledge, it's oftentimes quite easy actually to pluck through there and say, oh, okay, it looks like you only took the quiz one time. Maybe you want to start taking the quizzes multiple times. Or we could look back and say, okay, your quiz scores are just fine, but it looks like your lab quiz scores aren't as good as they should, aren't up to par. So you want to make sure to spend more time in the lab material before you take that quiz. And so we're able to go into your actual assessments and find out where we might be able to fix the problem, where you might be able to bring more of yourself into the course. I think maybe, I'm not really sure exactly how it's going to go yet, but it's very possible that students might have an overwhelming It might feel a lot of overwhelm because the class is going to move along very quickly. I would say that it might be quite easy for students to fall behind in the schedule. I'm just personally predicting that this could be a potential problem. So we would ask you to really be careful to prioritize this class. We don't expect it to be the only thing going on in your life at all times, but you must admit that the amount of information that is covered over a 4 to 6 to 8 day session will be a lot of information. And if you are leaving yourself not quite enough time to complete that because you have many obligations outside of this class, it may not be just the specific format of this class may not be a good fit for you. So that may be something that you want to keep in mind. If you simply don't have enough time because of other commitments, that is something that you need to ask yourself serious questions about that as early as possible in the course. But we are happy to help you if you are giving plenty of time to the course and you're really just trying to figure out what's going on. Of course, we're happy to meet with you and try to figure out what's going on and how we can address things better. You always want to be respectful of your classmates and the professors in this class. You want to stay on task. We want to make sure that we are protecting against plagiarism or any kind of cheating. Again, the main issue we would have is during assessments if you are looking up information inappropriately. That would be something that we would be addressing with consequences. And then the outcomes for the class are here. The learning outcomes, SLOs, the student learning outcomes. And then there's your schedule again. All right, that is the syllabus for you. And so I wanted to just go over everything there and make sure that you had all the information in the syllabus. As I said, this is a document that will remain in Schoology and it will simply be posted throughout the semester. So anytime that you need to go back to it, you may go back to it or just revisit this video or anything like that.